Self-improvement isn't just aesthetics. It's discipline, mindset, and showing up. No fluff, just real talk. Welcome to another self-love podcast. Let's get into it. A cute routine will make your life look better, but self-discipline will actually change it. You know exactly what I mean. Those perfectly curated morning routines we see everywhere. The soft lighting, the matcha, the 5-step skincare routine, the journaling, the workouts, it's all aesthetic. And honestly, it's nice to look at. But here's the real talk. Too many people get caught up in looking like they have their life together instead of actually doing the work that makes a difference. Motivation gets you excited to start, but it doesn't keep you going. And when life gets busy, overwhelming, or just straight up hard, that cute routine is the first thing to go. So today we're breaking it down. Why discipline matters way more than the aesthetic side of self-improvement, how to actually build it, and how I learned the hard way that the key to real change wasn't another Pinterest-worthy routine. You ever notice how easy it is to start something when you're feeling motivated? Whether it's a new morning routine, a workout plan, or a big goal, it's exciting. You're convinced. This time, I'm really going to stick with it. You're watching all the right videos, buying the right planner, setting the alarms, and for a few days, even a few weeks, it feels great. But then real life happens. Maybe you wake up exhausted one morning. Maybe you have a stressful day. Maybe you just don't feel like it. And suddenly, that perfect routine you were so hyped about, it's out the window. Sound familiar? Because I've been there a lot. For me, one of the biggest wake-up calls about self-discipline was real estate. When I started, I had 0 clients. No one's handing you deals. No one's giving you a structured to-do list. If you don't wake up and put in the work, literally nothing happens. And at first, I was so motivated. I had my to-do list, my game plan, my I'm gonna crush this energy. But let me tell you, when you go weeks, even months without seeing the results you want, it's so easy to fall off. There were mornings I woke up and thought, what's the point? Do I really need to post this content? Do I really need to follow up with people who haven't responded? It's not glamorous. No one's cheering you on every day, and this was my biggest lesson. Discipline is boring. No one tells you that. We love the idea of it, but real discipline, it's repetitive. It's doing the work when no one's watching. It's getting up and putting in effort before the results come, and once I finally accepted that, everything shifted. I stopped waiting for motivation, I just did the work, and that's when my business started growing. And I wish I could say I always understood this, but I didn't. I had to learn it the hard way. Before I figured out self-discipline, I was so stuck in the motivation trap. Take my morning routine. I spent 8 months trying to be part of the 5 a.m. club. 8 months. I set my alarms, I planned the perfect routine, I romanticized waking up early. I was convinced that a 5 a.m. wake up would change my life. But guess what? I kept hitting snooze every single time. And the worst part, every morning I did sleep in, I felt like a failure. Like, why can't I just stick to it? But the problem wasn't my routine. It was that I was relying on motivation to get out of bed instead of actually building discipline around it. The turning point, I stopped focusing on the aesthetic of it, how it looked, how it seemed, what it meant, and started focusing on just showing up. Even if I felt tired, even if I wasn't in the mood, I made it non-negotiable. And once I committed to it regardless of how I felt, that's when I actually made it a habit. And this is the crazy part. Once I finally built real discipline, I realized it wasn't restrictive at all. It actually made my life easier. I didn't have to overthink my mornings anymore because they were automatic. I didn't have to stress about where my next client was coming from because I trusted myself to keep putting in the work. I didn't have to constantly start over every Monday because I was finally consistent. And that's what people don't talk about. Discipline isn't about forcing yourself into some unrealistic, rigid structure. It's about taking control of your life, and the more disciplined I became, the more freedom I had. All right, let's talk about why motivation alone doesn't cut it. Motivation is that rush of excitement you get when you decide to start something new. It's like that honeymoon phase of a relationship. It's all fun, all energy, all let's do this. But just like in relationships, that initial high, it always fades. And here's the problem. Motivation is inconsistent. It comes and goes based on how you feel. Motivation relies on inspiration. But what happens when you're tired, when life gets stressful? Motivation makes you chase a high instead of actually building lasting habits. And I know this firsthand. Every single time I relied on motivation to carry me through a goal, it worked for about 2 weeks and then I'd fall off. And the worst part, I'd blame myself. Like, why can't I just stay consistent? But the truth is, I was relying on the wrong thing from the start. I want you to think about motivation like a toxic relationship. It feels amazing when it's good. It hypes you up. It makes you believe this time will be different. But then when things get hard, it ghosts you. It disappears when you actually need it most. But discipline is that solid, steady relationship. It's not flashy. It's not always exciting. But it shows up for you no matter what. It's reliable, and that's what actually creates change. So if motivation is flaky, what makes self-discipline different? It's a habit, not a feeling. You don't wait to feel like doing it. You just do it. It keeps you moving forward even when you don't feel like it. There's no, do I feel like it today? You just show up. It builds trust in yourself. The more you follow through, the more you believe in yourself. This is why discipline is the real game changer. It's what separates people who talk about changing their life from the ones who actually do it. It's why some people build businesses, get in shape, create the life they want, while others stay stuck in the cycle of starting over every few months. And I want you to ask yourself, how many times have you relied on motivation to change your life? How many times have you started something, felt excited, and then quit when the feeling went away? What would your life look like if you stopped waiting for motivation and just committed no matter what? And I see this all the time in real estate. There are agents who only work when they feel like it. They post when they're inspired. They reach out to clients when it's easy. But the agents who actually make it, they're the ones who show up every day, even when it's boring, even when it's tough. They don't see instant results. They don't get immediate wins. But 6 months later, a year later, they're the ones thriving because they stayed consistent even before they saw the payoff. That's what discipline does. It's not sexy. It's not aesthetic, but it works. For me, once I finally understood this, once I stopped chasing the high of motivation and just committed to showing up, that's when everything shifted. My fitness routine became effortless because I didn't give myself the option to skip. My real estate business took off because I stopped waiting for inspiration to post, to reach out, to build relationships. And the best part, I didn't have to start over every few months. I didn't have to rely on some new burst of motivation. I just stayed the course, and that's what actually changed my life. How to build self-discipline. 1. Lower the bar at first, start small, stay consistent. The biggest mistake people make when trying to build discipline, they start too big. They think discipline means doing everything perfectly from day one. Let's say you decide, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m., go to the gym for 90 minutes, meal prep, read a book, meditate, journal. That sounds great. But guess what? By day 3, you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, and you're right back where you started. Discipline isn't about doing the most. It's about being consistent. And consistency starts by lowering the bar at first. Instead of trying to do everything, commit to the smallest version of the habit you want to build. Want to start working out? Commit to 10 minutes instead of an hour. Want to journal daily? Start with 1 sentence instead of a full page. Want to wake up early? Try 15 minutes earlier, not 2 hours. I learned this lesson firsthand when I was trying to wake up at 5 a.m. At first, I kept failing because I was going from waking up at 7 or 8 to 5 a.m. overnight. My body wasn't ready for that, so I started small, just waking up 15 to 30 minutes earlier at a time, and that made all the difference. Instead of shocking my system, I gradually adjusted, and now 5 a.m. feels natural. If I had tried to force it all at once, I probably would have quit. When you make it easy, you take away the excuse to skip, and that's what builds momentum. Number 2, attach habits to a routine. Make it automatic. One of the easiest ways to build discipline is by attaching new habits to something you already do every day. Because when something is part of your routine, it takes way less effort to stick with it. This is called habit stacking, and it works like this. If you already make coffee every morning, use that time to journal. If you already brush your teeth at night, do 10 squats right after. If you already check your phone first thing in the morning, we all do it, take 30 seconds to set an intention for your day before scrolling. This made a huge difference for me when it came to saying affirmations. I wanted to start doing them daily, but I kept forgetting. It wasn't until I attached them to something I already did, drinking my morning coffee, that I actually stuck with it. Now my coffee time is my cue to say affirmations, and it feels effortless. By pairing new habits with existing ones, you're not forcing yourself to rely on willpower. You're making the habit automatic. 3, commit to a non-negotiable version. Show up no matter what. This one is a game changer. Most people think discipline means doing everything at 100% every day, but real discipline is about never letting yourself hit 0, even on your worst days. That's where the concept of a non-negotiable version of your habit comes in. It's about the absolute bare minimum you commit to no matter what. If you don't have time for a full workout, your non-negotiable might be 5 push-ups before bed. If you don't have time to read, your non-negotiable might be 1 page instead of a full chapter. If you're exhausted, your non-negotiable for self-care might be drinking a glass of water and stretching for 30 seconds before bed. For me, this shows up in my fitness routine. Even on my rest days, I always move my body. Whether it's a walk, stretching, or something light, that's my non-negotiable, because I know if I let myself completely skip movement, it becomes way too easy to fall out of the habit. But when I do something, even the smallest version, I keep my momentum going. The goal here is consistency over intensity, because the moment you let yourself skip completely, it's way easier to fall off. But if you always do something, even when it's tiny, you keep that habit alive. And here's the biggest mindset shift. Self-discipline is like a muscle. If you've never lifted weights before, why would you start trying to deadlift 300 pounds? You'd start with something manageable and gradually build strength over time. Discipline works the same way. The more you practice showing up, the easier it gets. The more you keep your promises to yourself, the more confident you become. The more you prove to yourself that you follow through, the less you even need motivation. So, instead of waiting to feel like it, start with something small, sustainable, and non-negotiable. Build from there, and before you know it, discipline won't feel like a struggle. It'll feel like who you are. All right, now it's time to put this into action, because listening to a podcast about self-discipline is one thing, but actually applying it, that's where the real change happens. So here's my challenge for you. Pick one habit you want to build, just one, not 5, not 3, 1. Something that if you did it consistently would make a real difference in your life. Maybe it's moving your body every day, drinking more water, reading before bed instead of scrolling, or finally sticking to a morning routine. Now, once you have that habit in mind, I want you to do 2 things. 1, lower the bar. What's the absolute easiest version of this habit you can commit to daily? Something so small that even on your worst day, you can still do it. 2, attach it to something you already do. Think about your routine. Where does this habit fit in naturally? Pair it with something you never skip so it becomes automatic over time. For the next 7 days, I want you to test this out. Commit to the smallest version, make it part of your routine, and see how it feels. And listen, this isn't about being perfect. If you miss a day, that doesn't mean you failed. The goal here is to train your discipline muscle to prove to yourself that you can show up even if it's just in a small way. And don't just keep it to yourself. DM me on Instagram and tell me what habit you're committing to. I want to hear what you're working on and cheer you on. Because self-discipline isn't built in a day, but the decision to start, that can happen right now. Next time, we're talking about the mental glow up that no one talks about. As always, thank you for spending part of your day with me. I don't take it for granted. I will see you next time.